series. And I know that, you have a lot of commitments and, you are so busy person. So it's another added pleasure for you to have you here, in terms of, taking time out from your schedule. So as people have said, so seen in the flyer, so Dr. Kalika Bali is a principal researcher, principal investigator at Microsoft Research India. She is a computational linguist and is one of the top experts in natural language processing and artificial intelligence as regards to technology related to Indian languages especially. So she wears many hats. She has been an academic as well as a brilliant researcher in her own right. And it really gives me great pleasure to formally introduce our today's speaker to all the participants. So participants, good morning to all of you as well. And although the vote of thanks will come at the end, so I must thank all the participants who are registered and who are attending. So because it's quite cold out here and raining in some parts of the country, Chennai included. So a lot of people are joining from there. In fact, one of our faculty members who has joined from Coimbatore. So without much further ado, I would, give you the platform to start today's lecture.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Shantanu, and thank you, everybody.
By the way, do you have any presentation?
Yes, of course, I have a presentation. I'll share the screen. I'll share the screen. Don't worry.
Yeah.
So oh, you've disabled screen sharing.
So the IT person will, Dr. Pradeep will just do it.
Yeah. So I'm very happy to be here. This was something that was long overdue. I had planned to come and visit the university and talk to people in person, but in current circumstances, this seems to be like the best option we have. So looking forward to interacting with everyone after the talk. Can I now share screen?
Share screen.
Yeah, I can. Just a second. Yeah. Wait. Right.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. Can you see
yes
in the slide mode? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So I'm going to talk about this work that we had been involved in and we had conducted a year ago, along with some of our research fellows and interns, as well as my colleague and fellow researcher at Microsoft Research, Monojit Chaudhary. So the question that we are trying to ask is, do multilingual users prefer chatbots that code mix or not? So that's where we're starting from. So if I was to show you this, I'm sure most of you, for you, this is not going to be unusual. Even if you don't know the languages, if I asked you what's common to all these tweets, I'm sure all of you would be able to say that they're all code mix. So when we say code mixing or code switching, I know linguistically they're slightly different phenomena, but in a broader sense, especially in natural language processing, they're kind of used interchangeably. It's the mixing of two or more languages in a single conversation and sometimes in a single sentence. And we in India are fairly aware of this phenomena. It's been studied by linguists for since I think 1940s in the Indian context, because the reason is that, so the reason is that in a multilingual society, this is a fairly common way when people at a societal level are fluent in more than one language, like they speak at a societal level, they speak more than one language. And, while in India, we're very aware of it, this is not something that is uncommon across the world. So, you find this between Turkish and German in Europe. You find this between Swahili and English in Africa, and between Spanish and English in the Americas. So between Indonesian and English in Indonesia. So it's a very common phenomenon across the world because, like I said, whenever there is societal level multilingualism, um, people mix. Now, this is an example which everyone can probably relate to really well. So this is a conversation between two friends, and they're constantly switching between English and Hindi. So Rohit says, "How are you, Sapna?" Sapna says, "I'm fine." और तुम सुनाओ क्या चल रहा है आजकल? I heard कि तुमने job change कर ली है. He says, "हाँ यार, I wasn't enjoying my job. और जब मैं खुद अपनी company run कर सकता हूँ, then why should I work for someone else?" So like you can see that these two are alternating between Hindi and English at sentence, phrase, and word level. And why we do this? There are structural, discourse, pragmatic, and sociolinguistic motivations that feed into why people code mix. And people have studied this, linguists have studied this, psycholinguists have studied this, sociolinguists have studied this. So this has been studied for a very long time in linguistics, though in the technology domain, this is a fairly new concept. People have started looking at code mixing fairly recently. So we have been, doing this in a project that we call Project Melange at MSR India. For almost 7 years now, 7 to 8 years now, where we kind of aim to analyze and understand code mixing behavior at both the structural and the functional level. And we believe that by doing so, this allows us to process code mixed language to model conversation and dialogues in a multilingual settings. So as all of you, I'm sure, are using and are aware of, these conversational assistants where you can talk to your phone, you can talk to um, these Siri and Cortana and Google Voice, etc. This has now become so common, but do we need to do this in a single language only, or should we talk to these mm, devices and these digital assistants in the language that we are most comfortable with in, and the way we talk naturally, to our friends or to our family? So the way we kind of work in MSR India is that, we believe that theory is kind of important, though we are not like married to a theory, but a general linguistic theory is kind of important for us to base our work on. So um, at for code mixing, for example, the first and foremost block that we worked on was detection. Like, how do, given a text string, how do you even understand that this part is English and this part is Hindi, right? Especially if people are writing in Romanized Hindi, then how do you even understand that? So first is the detection part. Then there are all kinds of natural language processing tools and models that allow us to process and generate. And then there are end applications. Are you going to use this for chatbot? Are you going to use this for machine translation? Are you going to use this for sentiment analysis? So there are end applications at the end that, are a part of the chain. And all this is, of course, like we in the today's world, everything is data. So all this is based on a lot of data, but the data kind of feeds into the theory and the models, and the theory and the models also feed back into these modules that we have kind of constructed. So we kind of work in that entire ecosystem to understand and process code mixing. So some of the things that we have been working on is like, in the area of computational models and linguistic theory, is like what kind of socio pragmatic functions of code switching are there for people. So, one work that we did was on how English Hindi bilinguals prefer to switch to Hindi for swearing and negative opinion. So if they're switching, whenever they have to give gali, like whenever they have to swear or abuse or say something negative, they will move to Hindi to do that. So that's the kind of thing that we have been looking into, like to understand what socio-pragmatic functions of code mixing exist for bilingual speakers. We've looked at grammar and acceptability also, like what code mixing structures are acceptable, what kind of linguistic theories are there, and we based on that, we actually created a generative model, which given parallel corpus in say 2 languages like English and Hindi, can generate code valid and acceptable code mixed sentences. And then, of course, there is the UI issue. If Cortana was to respond in mixed language, if like your digital assistant was to talk to you in mixed language, what, how would it do that? What is possible? What is not possible? How would you like it? So those were the kind of things that you know, motivated some of our work in this area. So when we talk about like, a natural human bot interaction, what exactly is natural? Of course, one major part of what natural is that we understand natural to be human like. So which means that the bot should have a consistent personality. It should mimic all the little nuances and quirks of human communication, and the behavioral intricacies of human communication should be reflected in the human digital agent communication. But humans are very adaptive and flexible in conversations, right? So we kind of change the way we speak, that we change our behavior based on who we are talking to, whether we have a shared context or not, whether we have what kind of a social cultural context are we in. So the way we talk to our friends, we all know this, right? Like the way we talk to our friends is very different from the way we talk to maybe our parents, the way we talk to our professors, the way we talk to our bosses, the way we do public speaking. So we kind of adapt and change a lot. So then, what really should a chatbot say in a conversation, and how should it say it, given that humans are changing constantly and they're doing things differently all the time? So we kind of in the context of code mixing, we kind of thought of code choice as an extension of a linguistic style, right? So conversational systems are right now predominantly monolingual. Even if we have new systems which work for, say, Hindi, Punjabi, Bengali, etc., they tend to work for a single language. But we know that at least in our context, that people mix languages, and this code choice of when we are going to speak in Hindi and when we are going to speak in English is associated with a lot of socio-pragmatic functions that influence our decision. So for example, if I know, say, Punjabi, if I do, then if I am in, so a couple of years ago, I was at Patiala University, and my parents' mother tongue is Punjabi, and I actually don't speak that much Punjabi at home, though I have some, latent knowledge of it. I can read, write, understand perfectly, but I don't speak it that much, and I hadn't spoken any Punjabi for thousands of years. But when I was at Patiala, I kind of, started mixing in a little bit of Punjabi into my conversation with the people there, because I wanted to. Now, why did I do that? Though they understood Hindi and English perfectly, my Punjabi wasn't that good. Though, later on, everyone was very kind to me and said that my Punjabi is really good. But why did I do that? I could have spoken in Hindi and English. They would have understood me perfectly, and they would have responded. Even if they responded in Punjabi, I would have understood them perfectly. But why would I then switch to Punjabi? The reason is that I wanted to kind of identify myself with the group. I wanted to kind of signal that I am somehow associated with you. I wanted to signal in group identity with the people there, right? So those are the kind of nuances that come just naturally. We do it without really thinking much about these things that are part of human behavior. So therefore, kind of trying to incorporate it into a human agent conversation becomes part of creating a more natural agent. Um, Similarly, this also has to do with how we code mix to accommodate conversation. So if an example of this would be that when I go to, say, the US, I see somebody who looks like they're from India. I don't immediately start talking to them in an Indian language, right? Like I would probably talk to them in English first, and try to maybe put in a word or two of Hindi in between. And if they respond with Hindi, then I would kind of switch to maybe speaking Hindi. So there are a lot of these kind of social linguistics and pragmatic and even more paralinguistic sociocultural factors that feed into a code choice, and why we think of the choice of switching as a linguist, as an extension of linguistic style, as such, right? Now, the research question, like I said, was that do multilingual users prefer chatbots that code mix systematically? And if so, what is the optimal way to code mix systematically? That is the question that we set out to answer in this work. And for doing that, we took this framework called computers as a social actors. Now, according to this particular framework, people should be able to do whatever comes naturally to them, right? And um, that would then be extended to a human machine interaction as well. So the rules for social relationships and the rules for navigating the world as we know it should also be the same when we kind of interact with our machines, right? The other factor that people take into account when they think of computers as social actors is that we humans have a tendency to treat computer systems as if they are also human. We kind of anthropomorphize all machines. It's like it starts from not only computers, like how people give names to their cars and to other machines, and think of them as friends or humans, to if you talk to Siri, you refer to it as her or him, and depending on the setting on your phone, or you kind of try to give them human-like personalities and human-like um, forms. And this means that for somebody to who's building the system, they have to be able to make it such that humans are able to interact with these machines as if they are other humans, right, and not as machines. So if in bilingual communities, that means that humans interact with each other in a mixed language, then that should carry over to the chatbots that they interact with in such communities. So the two things that we kind of looked at as we went forward was the communication accommodation theory, which basically says that when people talk to each other, they do try to cooperate and end up reciprocating each other's styles um, to accommodate each other, right? And this is like something that's like fairly well studied, and we see examples of this a lot, especially when we look at some of the sociolinguistic literature. And therefore, by extension, chatbots that adopt to or reciprocate a user's style would probably be more pleasing, would be appreciated more by the user than a one size fits all. So this goes back to computers as social actors. Like, here is a chatbot that is accommodating to your style, which is how a human would behave, and therefore you would probably like it better. So those were the kind of um, fundamentals that we based the theory, the work on. And our hypothesis was that chatbots that code mix will be more human-like, or it will be thought of as more human-like, and a chatbot that adapted to the style of the user would be more pleasing to the person who's using it. So to do this, we conducted a kind of a human in the loop system, or like a Wizard of Oz study, as it is called. And the reason for this was very simple. There are, I mean, I don't think even now there are any bots that code mix, right? There are English bots, there are Hindi bots also now, but there are no bots that can converse in a natural code mixed manner. So we had to put a human in the loop to make that possible. So this was basically how the system worked, that the user, you know, message, put some message, say in code mixing. The human in the middle translated this whole thing into English and sent it to the English bot. The bot responded in English, and using whatever the a particular experiment setting was, the human changed the response, and then forwarded it to the user. So the wizard's role in the middle was just to include or not include code mixing, you know, because the bot could not code mix and we didn't have any settings on the English bot to include Hindi. The That was primarily the role of the wizard. They couldn't change the message, you know, the meaning of the message. They couldn't change the structure too much, only, you know, to the extent that a valid code mixing uh, was allowed. But so they couldn't interfere with the actual message as such, just make it code mixed basically. So then we annotated all this conversation, and simply English was taken as the unmarked code. And we had like a simple schema to classify any sentence based on how much code mixing was there. So the major dominant language was either English or Hindi, and the extent to which the minor language or the non-dominant language was present in the sentence was marked. So for example, if there was a sentence like, the weather is nice today, isn't it? This is purely in English, so it was just English. The weather is nice today, nahi. So only the tag is translated into Hindi, so it was et. Mausam is nice today, isn't it? So this is one lexical item has been changed, so el. And weather aaj acha hai nahi is a Hindi dominant language with just a single lexical item in English. So this was the kind of protocol we followed to annotate uh, the conversations. So there were three major policies that we implemented that the wizards had to follow to kind of facilitate this interaction. One was the baseline, where there was no code mixing. Okay, so whatever they said, the reply was always in English. Okay, there was nothing. Whatever the user said, the reply was in English. Then there was this always mix policy. So it didn't matter what language the user used or you know, messaged in, all the responses were code mixed. Even if the user did not use code mixed language, the the responses were all code mixed. And then there was this nudge policy, which is explained here, where it started with a full English response, but then slowly introduced a small amount of Hindi into the replies, right? Only like by changing a tag word or a single lexical item, and you know, kind of nudging, you can call it like a nudging the user to see if they would respond in Hindi. And then once a nudge was made and the mixing level of the user's text message was you know, taken as a feedback signal, accordingly you know, more and more mixing was introduced into the responses from the bot. So this is very much like the scenario that I talked about in you know, when I go to the US and I meet somebody from India, or who looks like Indian. I don't know whether they speak Hindi or not, or whether even if they are actually from India or not. I would start by just saying maybe yaar or like nahi or some such small thing. And if they respond in Hindi, then I would like respond back. So this was based on that human interaction behavior. It's also called breadcrumbing, because you're kind of throwing breadcrumbs for people to follow and to see if they will follow or not follow. So the experiments that we conducted were, there were three parts of it. One was like a pre-baseline, no code mixing thing. Then there was this always mix, and then there was this nudge one. And each of these was followed by a 15, like each of these was a 15-minute session, and it was then followed by interview with the user. So 91 users participated in this study. 66% were male. The average age was around 25 years. We did not control for these kind of things because um, uh, for age especially, because it's there is some literature available saying that most of the technology users fall in this slightly younger age group. 62 participants of these used conversational agents rarely to never, and 5 of them used them every day. All of them were from India and proficient in English. So what did we measure? So we measured individual conversation feedback. So we asked them to kind of rate the bot on its humanness, or how human like it was, on a 7-point Likert scale. um, like you know and this was followed by subjective questions like, what did you like or dislike about the conversation? Did the bot's use of mixed language feel forced, or was it natural, etc., etc.? Then we asked explicit questions about comparing the control monologue, which was like the baseline where no code mixing was happening, and the code mixing bot. So among these two, how you interacted with which one did you prefer? Did you notice any differences? Then, of course, we had these chat log measures where we had a Boolean variable that indicated whether or not the user code mixed, and an accommodation score based on the annotations that I showed you before on the user side. So these were some of the example conversations that were seen in the part of the study. So for example, the second one, the user says to the system, I'm good, I'm going for a movie. Visit to the bot straight away. Bot respond so straight away. So this is like it goes on like this, and then here suddenly, where you have really not a thing, you can see the system responds with sachi, not a thing, instead of saying really not a thing. And the user gets very excited. This is, oh, you speak Hindi, sahi hai. And then the system says, thanks for aapka criticism, and that has to do with the bot. So you can see that this probably is not the right response, but the wizard is not allowed to interfere, and they kind of just put in the aapka thing there, and instead of changing the bot's response to something that was more appropriate. So these are this is the way the conversation basically went. So what were the results? So in the results, we found that participants mainly rated the code mixing chatbots as higher on both human likeness and their conversational ability. So they found that those bots were more natural, as well as like the conversations were better, right? But there was a certain effect of language proficiency here. So the users who themselves code mixed like the bilingual chatbots higher than those who didn't, right? So here you can see that this accommodation to a user's style did indeed make them like the bot better. The second thing was, linguistic reciprocation and naturalness. Like when the participants felt, so this is what I was saying, that when they felt that the chatbot was reciprocating their code mixing, they rated the bot as more natural. Okay. So that was very clear from all the results that we got. The other thing was that's nudge policy versus always mix policy. Now, a lot of users expressed that the presence of code mixing influenced their ratings to be more positive. So they did actually say that they liked the bot that mixed more than the bot that did not mix. But there was a significant percentage of people who either did not like the code mixing bot at all, or they said that they didn't think that mattered at all, right? And there were several reasons for this. So why did some people think that the code mixing was actually affecting their judgment negatively, like they did not like the code mixing bot? And the reasons that we found were many fold. So one was uh, to do with their own view on code mixing. So some people thought that code mixing was the wrong way. It was a wrong way to use language, it was incorrect, and therefore that bot should not be using it. Some people thought that code mixing is very informal, so a bot is a much more formal uh, thing, and therefore interacting with a bot, they should not be code mixing. So even if they were code mixing themselves, and they did, and they used it with friends, etc., they did not want the bot to be doing this because it was a formal setting, it was wrong for that setting for them. And the third reason was that for a lot of people, they kind of got a little freaked out that the bot was trying to be more human like. So their response was not that code mixing is wrong or this is not the right setting, but why is a machine trying to be like a human? We don't want a machine to be so natural and so human like. So there were various reasons. Now, what it means for a person who is developing, what do these results mean for a person who is developing a code mixing bot? How do we even do this then? Because we cannot from the beginning know that the what the user's views on code mixing are, and what whether they would have a strong reaction to a human like bot, or whether they think that a bot, we don't know these things, right? Like your assistant on a phone does not know all these things about you already, and it cannot we cannot create bots differently for all such settings. So therefore the nudge policy is the way to go, right? Because it is a low risk low reward. So always mix might get very strong good responses from people, these 53% of the population, right? But if you follow a nudge policy, and slowly mix, you also include this 13 and this 34% in the um, people who like the bot, who like interacting with the bot, right? So the implications finally for the design of conversational systems from this study is that chatbots should definitely code mix, right? Because there's a huge percentage of the population that uses language in that way, and they kind of want the bots to talk to them the way they talk to other humans. Um, the second thing is nudge when you're uncertain about users' preference, and nudge when you're uncertain about users' fluency in the language. So at the end, nudge is the way to go. Nudge, don't push or assume about your users. And thank you. I'd be happy to take questions.
So thank you, Kalika. So that was a very engaging talk. And if I have the privilege of asking you the first question to set the ball rolling,
Sure.
I was wondering, is it even pragmatic or even ethical to make a machine behave like a human?
So I think a machine is not a human. If you are kind of, I think what is unethical is to kind of let people think that they're talking to a human when they're talking to a machine, and not being absolutely clear that this is actually a machine. But definitely for any of the tasks that we do, especially with conversational systems, if the machines were to mimic human behavior, were to have conversations which were more human-like, it makes the entire process easier for the humans who are using it. So that's the
So it's actually another version of the Chinese room problem. So where you don't know whether it's a machine or the human who is
No, I
who is
don't think
doing
you
it.
should do that. I think that actually is, I
Well,
personally
it's
think that's
it's
unethical.
well,
I think you should not um, l- you shouldn't hide the fact that they're interacting with the machine.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think like if you're downloading something on your phone and installing something on a phone, um, you're not aware that it is not a
Yeah, so
machine.
yeah, so the next question is come from a participant who says, "Could you please explain more on computers as social actors?"
Computers are social actors. Yeah, so I can go back also to the slide and talk about it. So computers are social actors. It's like a HCI framework, which basically assumes that um, human beings want um, computers to be more human-like when they're interacting with them. And the framework basically also says that because we as humans think of machines as social beings, as humans, well, human-like at least. Um, Therefore, whatever interactions that humans have with humans should be kind of reflected in the interactions a human has with the machine. So that's the crux of what the computers as a social actors framework is. So the the implication for someone who's designing such systems is that they have to really understand how human interaction takes place, how human communication takes place, how do humans behave with other humans, and only then try to design a human machine communication system, right? So that's the framework. If you have any other questions, I can um, try to answer them, or I can even send you references for papers that you might want to read in that. Was that clear? Is there?
I hope so. So they can interact with you offline as well. I
Sure.
think
Yeah.
if that is if time does not permit, because there are so many questions coming up.
Right.
So one question is that, is there any opinion on the language used by robots in the visual media?
Uh, so what does that mean? What exactly does?
Probably talking about uh, if I interpret this question is in terms of some visual inputs and visual cues or
Mul-
gestures or something like
Yeah, so
that maybe.
multimodal. Yeah, so there's a lot of work in multimodal interaction as well, and there's a lot of research. I personally do not. I'm not an expert in multimodal interaction, but yeah, there is a lot of work going on which kind of tries to incorporate gestures. So from say a robot communicating, if they turn and look at the person, or like move their head around as they're talking, or if they move their hands like I am moving, if they do this as they're talking, um, they are deemed to be much more natural and human like, that uh, people perceive them as much more natural and human like, rather than if they were just standing in one place and with rigidly and speaking. So there are a lot of there is a lot of work going on in the role that gesture plays in human communication, and how
Yeah.
to kind of
I think
incorporate that.
so. The kind of human movements that mimicked by the machines. I think Boston Dynamics is the probably the fastest coming up company,
Yeah.
upcoming startup that
Yeah.
they have these robots running and jumping and all those nice videos.
Yeah.
So are they? So they would probably latch onto these gestures at some point of time.
Yeah, then though there are some, it's not like very advanced, but there are certain gestures which are incorporated into robots even now. So simple ones. So making sure that you turn your head to talk to the person, um, and kind of turn your head if so for example, there's this robot which indicates where to go, right? So when it's talking to the person and the person standing here, that look at the person and say something and then do this when they're indicating the way, just like humans would. So just simple things like that are currently they are indeed incorporated, but it's not very complex right now.
Yeah, so the next question is about whether English speaking countries, people in English speaking countries mix the codes like the Asian people. So it's interesting, and I think they do probably. Yeah.
Um,
Any,
like I said, in English speaking countries, if there is no societal level multilingualism, then maybe mixing happens more in a personal domain, right? With friends who speak. See, if I mix now, if I'm a Spanish and English speaker, and in this meeting where I don't know if there's anyone who is a Spanish and English speaker. If I start, but I'm assuming there isn't. If I start speaking in Spanglish, it doesn't make any sense, right? Because who am I actually speaking to?
absolutely. So this is an interesting question, which talks about an ESL teacher. So searching for the mental vocabulary and trying to stay in a single language, or whichever word first comes to the mind, irrespective of the language, it needs to be blurted out. Which one is better for the ESL teacher?
Okay, there has been work done in this area, not by me, but I think Manjira and Tirthankar, they did some work from IIT KGP on from a language learning perspective. What is it that we store in our mental lexicon? How do we store it? How do we access it? And there are a little bit of competing theories about it. Some people, and it also depends on the proficiency. As our proficiency grows, then um, how do we access it? So uh, there is no right or wrong binary answer to that. There are competing theories, and it really depends on the context and the population and their proficiency. So I have to make one thing clear. As far as I'm concerned, code mixing can only happen if people are proficient, they have a certain proficiency in both the languages. If
Absolutely.
somebody is substituting a word because they don't know that language, I don't consider that as code mixing. To be able to code mix where you have all these socio-pragmatic functions that cause code mixing, you have to have fairly good proficiency in both the languages, if not equal, but good.
So, in fact, the next question is about the future of code mixing research in India.
Yeah, there are lots of people
So
who are doing
yeah,
it.
so there are a lot of, and it has a huge impact on the way we interact and bring these technologies to the last mile connectivity. So my next question is actually going to be that to you is how do you perceive this thing to be going on in the current scenario where so the remote villages, the people are trying of connectivity, talking of connectivity, especially in the last 7 or 8 months we have seen where we actually stand with respect to that. And so what do you think we should do next about it? And
About
how,
code mixing or
uh,
about
uh,
last minute connectivity?
about the last minute connectivity using code mixing, or what it
So I
is.
don't know, like if it is about code mixing at all there. So code mixing can vary so much. There's so much variation, and like it's not. We haven't really solved the problem, right? Like it, as you know for sure that it varies from group to group, from language to language, from various social contexts, etc. Um, but what is definitely clear is that it is no longer this, this um, urban city kids who do it kind of a perception, right? um, when I was young, people thought, oh, this is very Delhi thing to do or a Bombay thing to do. These city kids do it, but it's not perceived as such. Even the English versus local language mix is not perceived as a very city thing now to do. Though the last minute connectivity, I really am. I think that's a very big problem that we haven't really gotten to grips with. Uh, we say only purely from the education perspective, right? Most of the tools that we want to use are English based. They're not even like, we don't even have them in local languages, right? We're
Absolutely.
talking about a huge population of students in India who are going to kind of fall through the cracks because there's connectivity issues. You know, internet doesn't work. Like, even for me, I live in Bangalore. I have, the best package that can be offered to me that I can pay and get, right? And even then, like, if everyone here was to start streaming their videos, my system would crash, right? um,
Absolutely.
so there is the connectivity issue. There's also this simple digital literacy issue, right? You have been teaching kids in a certain way for a long time, and you suddenly expect them to switch over to a completely digital form of learning, without equipping them or the teachers with how to make this successful, you know.
Absolutely. So I agree with it. So before, I don't know if there are any other questions. I think we have tackled all of them. Uh, so before I go into the vote of thanks, uh, I want to make an announcement about the feedback link, which has been shared both on YouTube as well as over here in the chat box. So please fill up that form, and it will help us in dispatching the e-certificates to the participants.
Can
So
I say one thing, like
sure,
my
sure, 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 sure. Please go
soapbox?
ahead.
So my soapbox is that, we have this huge population of very, I would say, capable young people, who are interested and are capable of doing so much more. And I would kind of think that people should kind of look around them a little bit, look at the problems around them, and think of ways that they can kind of help to solve those. Um, so from a purely linguistics perspective, I would say that we still don't understand so much about, say, the phonology of intonation, for example. We don't have very good. So this happened to us when we were looking into a lot of the linguistic literature for understanding, say how speech works in terms of intonation, etc. And we don't have much work in that area for all the Indian languages as such, right? Like, except for one or two. Even for Hindi, we don't have that much work, which is like the most worked on language. um, there's so many things that we can do to make sure that these technologies that we have for English um, can also be available to everybody who uses our languages. And I would like really encourage people to look into what is being done, what is not being done, where the gaps are, and perhaps get inspired to do something about it.
Absolutely. There's so much work to be done. We are barely scratching the surface. And
Absolutely.
English actually has a head start of almost 130 years.
Exactly.
So we are lagging behind in our own languages. And so India being a multilingual country, we need it the most. And still we are so much behind. So there's a huge scope of work in this area, in this very, very interesting area of NLP and associated other technologies, and also some very, very esoteric philosophical points about how anthropomorphic machines can be, and stuff like that. So that is a debate for a future webinar or seminar. I would prefer a seminar
Yeah.
in person. It's been some time that we have had those physical interactions. So the feedback form has also been put up in the YouTube, if somebody is watching there. So please fill up. And I think we have just looked at some of the very, very simple and complex things over here. And each of them, both simple and complex things, they can be looked at in so great detail. And as Dr. Bali said, we have a long way to go, and youngsters are the ones who will carry this forward. And uh, as per her request, I think I should also, ask and appeal to them to look at problems of everyday life and propose solutions to them. And every good thing comes to an end. I know that she has other engagements, so with a little bit of trepidation and not wanting to let you go, I thank you on the behalf of Akal University and especially the Department of English Studies, on whose behalf I conduct this webinar. And I thank the IT team over here who made this possible, and all the other people who are associated with the publicity, and especially thanks to Dr. Harish, who has been designing all our posters and including yours. So it was his idea to get that chat box, WhatsApp thing. So it was quite, amusing to me, and also it was very, very, nice to see him working so hard. And last but not the least, the audience who has been asking these questions and listening so patiently to this webinar. They have been, some of them have been attending the classes in the morning and then switched on to this webinar. And thanks so much. And thank you again, Dr. Kalika Bali,
Thank
for
you.
being with us. Thank you
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for inviting me and thanks for listening to me.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.